The Street of the Holy Spirit, Gdansk, where pirates, philosophers, and sculptors once lived. There's a street in Gdansk just 300 meters long, narrow, quiet, with stone porches and ochre facades. Tourists walk through it, take a few photos, and move on. A mistake, because behind these walls lies a story that has everything: pirates, stolen masterpieces, a great philosopher, a fire that destroyed an entire city, and an incredible resurrection from the ashes. This is the Street of the Holy Spirit, and here's what it remembers. Let's start with the most unbelievable fact. In house number 19 lived Paul Benecke, officially a privateer hired by the Hanseatic League, unofficially one of the most successful pirates on the Baltic Sea. In 1473, he seized a Florentine galley in the North Sea. Among the cargo was a wooden crate containing a painting, the triptych The Last Judgment by Hans Memling, commissioned by the Medici Bank. 3.5 meters of oak panels, oil paint, and at the center, Archangel Michael weighing human souls on a set of scales. Lorenzo de' Medici personally demanded the painting back. Danzig went silent. The triptych was hung in St. Mary's Church, and it stayed in the city forever. Well, almost. Napoleon took it to Paris in 1807. Berlin tried to keep it, offering a copy of the Sistine Madonna in exchange. Gdansk refused. In 1945, Goering shipped it to Thuringia. Soviet troops sent it to Leningrad, where it sat in the Hermitage until 1956. Then it came back. Again. 500 years, and the painting always returns to Gdansk. Today, it hangs in the National Museum, just a few blocks from the pirate's house. The next story is about a boy who was born here and grew up to become the architect of an entire era. Around 1660, on the Street of the Holy Spirit, in a sculptor's family, Andreas Schluter was born. He trained under a local master, left for the Netherlands, fell in love with the Baroque, and began a career that would take him first to Warsaw, then to Berlin, and finally to St. Petersburg. In Berlin, he created the equestrian statue of the Great Elector and the masks of dying warriors in the arsenal, faces of such piercing expressiveness that contemporaries didn't know how to explain them. Later generations would call him the Northern Michelangelo. In 1713, Peter the Great, personally recommended Schluter by the philosopher Leibniz, appointed him chief architect of St. Petersburg. The boy from the Street of the Holy Spirit created the bas-reliefs of the Summer Palace and developed designs for Peterhof. He died in St. Petersburg in 1714, just a year after arriving, having realized barely half of what he had planned. His bas-reliefs on the Summer Palace still stand today. And in 1788, in house number 47, Arthur Schopenhauer was born. His father was a merchant and a passionate free thinker, so devoted to the freedom of his hometown that when Prussian troops surrounded Danzig in 1993, he sold everything within 24 hours and fled with his family just hours before the soldiers arrived. 5-year-old Arthur remembered that escape. He grew up, wrote The World as Will and Representation, and became one of the most widely read philosophers in history. Nietzsche devoured his work. Tolstoy called him the most honest thinker who ever lived. The house where he was born was destroyed in the fires of 1945, but the memorial stone on the street was restored in 2018. And now we reach the great tragedy of this street. March 1945. Soviet and Polish forces are storming Danzig. 96,000 soldiers against 25,000 German defenders who had mined the bridges, turned stone buildings into firing positions, and had no intention of surrendering. The fighting went house by house. As the Germans retreated, they burned everything behind them. Wooden ceilings caught fire instantly. Church bells melted on their towers and dripped down in silence. The Street of the Holy Spirit burned along with the rest of the city. On March 30th, a Polish flag was raised over the ruins. One British eyewitness wrote that in the charred remains, he recognized only 3 buildings. 80 to 95% of the historic center gone. 700 years of architecture in a matter of days. But then something unexpected happened. The new residents of Gdansk, Poles resettled from Vilnius and other lost cities, began rebuilding a city that wasn't theirs. From old German photographs, postcards, and archival drawings, decade by decade, block by block, the Street of the Holy Spirit got its porches back, those distinctive stone stoops found nowhere else in Gdansk. The facades were restored to their original colors. The Royal Chapel, a Baroque gem built on this very street in 1677 by King Jan III Sobieski, stands in its place once more. Today, tourists stroll unhurriedly down the Street of the Holy Spirit. Some photograph the porches, some step into a restaurant where live music plays in the evenings. Near the Royal Chapel stands a stone marking the birthplace of Schopenhauer. A few blocks away hangs the triptych stolen 5 centuries ago. 300 meters walked by pirates, philosophers, and sculptors. A street that burned and came back. A street that remembers everything. If you ever find yourself in Gdansk, walk down it. It takes 5 minutes, but you'll be thinking about it for much longer.